The Wurundjeri are an Aboriginal Australian nation of the Wui Wurrung language group, in the Kulin Nation. They occupied the Burrarong Valley before British colonisation of the area, around the present location of Melbourne. Except for the tribal warfare, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people remained in Australia for nearly 60,000 years unchallenged by the outside world. But things were about to change. In 1768, British explorer, surveyor, navigator and cartographer James Cook embarked on his first Pacific voyage aboard His Majesty's bark Endeavour. Endeavour crew made first landfall at Botany Bay on April 29, 1770. 11 ships, later known as the First Fleet, departed from Portsmouth, England, on May 13, 1787 to found New South Wales, the penal colony that became the first European settlement in Australia. HMS Calcutta, that left England in April 1803 for Port Phillip to form a new settlement under Lieutenant Colonel David Collins, which anchored near what later became Sorrento in Victoria. William Buckley was one of the convicts transported in HMAS Calcutta. Buckley escaped the camp, which was later abandoned. He lived with Aborigines for 32 years before being found by John Batman on his arrival at Intended Head, Geelong. Buckley's life and adventures were recorded in a volume by John Morgan, of Hobart, in the year 1852, in a publication titled Life and Adventures of William Buckley. It was from Buckley the settlers learned about the Aboriginal customs and way of life. This video is based on the book, Life and Adventures of William Buckley. Buckley, after his escape from the settlement, wandered around alone for months until he was met with 4 Aboriginal women. Aborigines had a belief that when they die, they go to some place or other and are there made a white man and then return to this world again for another existence. They thought all white people previous to death belonged to their own tribe, thus returning to life in a different skin color. They found Buckley at a place where a deceased man named Muranjurk of their tribe was buried. The natives mistook Buckley as Muranjurk, who returned from death as a white man. Here begins the customs, traditions and life of Aborigines who lived in Melbourne. Physique and food habits. The Aborigines inhabited in Victoria were of middle stature with dark complexion, but not as dark as those living in warmer latitudes. Their forms and features were not strikingly handsome, but many of them would be good-looking. Their hair was straight. They ate all kinds of beasts, fish and fowl, reptile and creeping things, which included squirrels, possums, toads, mice, snakes and wombats. Wild dogs and kangaroo rats were considered great luxuries. They trained dingoes for kangaroo hunting. The tribe bartered food between them, for example fish for roots. It is customary among tribes to invite friendly tribes to share their fortune, if they found food in abundance at any location. Aborigines moved from one place to another either when food supply deteriorates of hunting, or getting fed up with the sameness of the food. When some men together leave the group, for distant hunting, they mark their hands with stripes, one for each day to remember for how many days they were away. Another of their delicacy was large ants called kalkeith, which were found in hives, within hollow trees. Once these ants are collected from their hives, they are prepared for eating, by placing them on slips of bark around 3 feet long, and 1 foot wide, and roasted. It is only 1 month in each year they can be had, for after that time they are transformed to large flies. Disposing of dead bodies. If the dead body is of an enemy fighter. After a fight with the enemy tribe, the winner cuts off the flesh, off the bones of the deceased enemy tribe members, and stones were heated for baking it, after which they greased their children with it. The bones were broken into pieces, with tomahawks, and given to the dogs or put on the boughs of trees, for the birds of prey, hovering over. Disposing the body of own tribesmen. They dig round graves with their sticks, about 4 feet deep, and then coil up the dead body, tying them in their skin rugs. The bodies are laid on their sides, when they bury them in the same manner, as they mostly lie when living. The dead body is laid in the holes, with some boughs and filling them up with earth. A ring is made round the burial area, by clearing away and lighting fires. After raking up the ashes over each, if the dead is a woman, sticks which they had used for digging roots were put over them. For men, their spears are kept over them. They had an idea that when they come back to life they will need them. And the fire left they think will do for them to cook their roots with. Of this provision, they generally leave a few days' supply, and whenever they pass near these graves, they relight the fire. When a child dies, they place the body in an upright position in a hollow tree, and allow it to remain there until perfectly dry, then the parents retrieve it and carry it about with them. Tribal fights. Tribes meet mainly for the exchange of food. Meeting of tribes were not solely for the purpose of exchanging food. but also for the purpose of bringing out their marriageable daughters to be seen, known, and courted by other tribesmen. By this very natural process, much ill will and wild desperate passions were unfortunately excited, and frightful murders ensue, some of them never to be forgiven until a fearful revenge has followed. Jealousy was the most prevalent cause of all fights. The reason for most of the fights between tribes were women. Women having been forcibly carried over by the other tribe, or women after being seduced by a member of the other tribe, if decided to leave with them. The tribes used spears and boomerangs for fighting. Marriage, customs and ceremonies. In many instances, a girl as soon as born is promised to a man. After this promise, the mother of the child never speaks to the intended husband, or to his brothers before he takes her to himself. She shuns them in the most careful manner. If the future son-in-law, or his brothers visit the tribe, she is always previously informed about their coming, so that she will have time to get out of their way. If by chance she meets them, she will always covers her head over with her skin cloak. The son-in-law may see his proposed father. Their belief is that if the mother sees the future son-in-law, it will cause her hair to turn gray immediately. The only ceremonies they use preparatory to marriage are in first place to get the parents' consent. The suitor's best claim is being a good fighter and an expert hunter, so has been able to protect and provide for the family. They are not at all particular as to the number of wives such men have. Consequently, some men have 5 or 6 wives, and other none at all. If a man wishes to have another man's grown-up sister as wife, he must give his own, if he has one, in exchange. But they are very averse to marrying one of their own relations, even of a distant degree. If a woman is supposed to have a child that is not her husband's, they consider it a great disgrace. And the infant death was almost certain. If again, a family increases too rapidly, for instance a woman has a child within 12 months of a previous one, they hold a consultation amongst the tribe she belongs to, as to whether it shall live or not. But if the father insists upon the life of child being spared, they do not persist in its destruction, and especially if it is a female. If the tribe is on the move during delivery, they wrap the child in a piece of skin rub, and move on. They name the child according to the circumstances that happen. Perhaps after a lake or river they are near. 2 brothers happen to be married, and one dies, the survivor claims the wives of the deceased. Should the woman object, there is little chance of their lives being spared, as this law of custom is absolute. Infidelity. Promiscuous intercourse of the sexes is common, and on certain festivals, it is even encouraged. At certain times, the women are formally left to the young men who have no wives. Sometimes a black will go and entice away a woman, the husband will allow her to go with him, but she will have a severe beating on her return. God. Aboriginals had no notion of God, though they believed in afterlife. They did not offer up any kind of prayer, even to the sun or moon. They had a notion that world is supported by props, which are in charge of a man, who lives at the farthest end of earth. Children. Aborigines are generally very kind to children, except when they are illegitimate. If the woman has been promised to one man and is afterwards given to another, in such case her firstborn is invariably killed soon after birth. As soon as children are about to toddle about, they begin as if by instinct to search for food. By the age of 4 or 5, they are able to dig roots, and live without the aid of their parents. Musical instruments. They had no kind of musical instrument except for a skin rug which stretched from knee to knee, they beat upon, others keeping time with sticks. Shaving. When their beard is fully grown, they singe it with a fire stick or pluck it off by mussel shells. They had a great aversion to gray hair. Women pluck them out whenever they appear on their husbands' or their own heads until they are widespread. Ornaments. Women were very fond of ornaments. Their headbands were knitted like silk purses, and they do this kind of work without using needle or any other instrument, but with their fingers. Neck ornaments were made with shells, kangaroo teeths, and feathers of swans and emus. Many of the women used to wear rings made out of the bones of birds suspended from inside of their nostrils. Those who had the most ornaments are considered most fashionable and attractive. Clothing. In winter months they used to wear animal skin rugs sewn together with sinews, using as needles fine bones of kangaroo. These rugs served them also to lay upon. Native language varies according to the tribe. Individual belongs to each tribe having a peculiar expression of their own. Cannibalism. There were Aboriginal tribes notorious for their cannibal practices. Some of the Aboriginal tribes were cannibals like the Paladerg Barons. If they kill a man from another tribe out of vengeance, In some occasions they cut flesh from the body, roast it on heated stone and eat part of it.